Captain Underpants and the Attack of the Talking Toilets. More action, more laughs, more flippy rab. Hello. Before you read this book, there's some things you should know. So Harold and I have created this informative pamphlet to fill you in on the details. Please don't let this comic fall into the wrong hands. The Top Secret Truth About Captain Underpants by George B. and Harold Hutchins, who deny everything. Once upon a time, there were two cool kids named George and Harold. We are cool. Me too. They made their own comics about a superhero named Captain Underpants. Tra-la-la! Everybody thought their comics were funny. Ha 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 ha. Except for their mean old principal, Mr. Grubb. Blah blah blah. One time, Mr. Grubb was being mean to George and Harold. Blah blah blah. So they bought the 3D hippo ring. They hypnotized Mr. Grubb. I will obey. They turned him into Captain Underpants. But Mr. Grubb thought he really was Captain Underpants. He jumped out of the window to fight crime. Uh-oh. Tra-la-la. George and Harold tried to stop him, but they had to save the world first. Bad guy. Kaboom! When they got back to school, George poured water in Captain Underpants' head. He turned back into Mr. Crab, but something was wrong. Blah, blah, blah. Because now, for some strange reason, every time Mr. Crab hears somebody snap their fingers, he turns back into Captain Underpants. Tra-la-la. So whatever you do, please don't snap your fingers around Mr. Crab. Please, please, please don't snap those fingers. This has been a public service announcement from George and Harold, who still deny everything. The end. Chapter 1, George and Harold. And this is George B. and Harold Hutchins. George is the kid on the left, the tie and the flats up. Harold is the one on the right, the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now. Depending on who you ask, you probably hear a lot of different things about George and Harold. Their teacher, Miss Rebel, might say that George and Harold were very discrepant in their talents. Their gym teacher, Mr. Meaner, might add that they were in serious need of major attitude adjustment. Principal, Mr. Krupp, would probably include sneaky, criminally mischievous, and I'll get those boys if it's the last thing well, you get the idea. But if you asked your parents, they probably that George and Harold were smart and sweet and very good-hearted. Even a bit silly at times, I'd have to agree with their parents. But even so, their silliness still had them into a lot of trouble. Sometimes, in fact, one time, there's so much trouble, they almost destroyed a whole planet. An army of evil, vicious, talking toilets. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 2, this story. One fine morning at Jerome Mormon's elementary school, George and Harold has just the 4th grade read at gym class when they saw a big sign in the hallway. It was an announcement for the 2nd annual Invention Convention. And George and Harold had found memories of last year's Invention Convention, but this year's was a bit different. The first prize winner got to be principal for the day. Wow, said George. Whoever gets to be principals, they get all the rules for the whole day and never follow those rules. We got to win first prize this year, exclaimed Harold. Just then, George and Harold principal's pal, Mr. Krupp, showed up. Aha, he shouted. I'll bet you two are up to no good. Not really, said George. We were just reading about this year's contest. Yeah, said Harold. We're going to win first prize in the contest and be principals for the day. Laughed Mr. Krupp. Do you two honestly think I'd let you two enter this year's contest after that stuff at last year's annual Invention Convention? George and Harold smiled and thought back to the first annual Invention Convention. Chapter 3, the flashback. It was about 1 year earlier, when all the philosophers at Jerome Mormon's elementary school had gathered gymnasium for what would be later known as the sticky chair incident. George and Harold stepped up to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, said George, Harold and I have invented something guaranteed to keep you all glued to your seats. Yes, said Harold, we call it glue. Mr. Crab became very angry. You two did not invent glue, he shouted. He stood up to take the microphone away from Harold. His chair stood up with him. Everyone in the gymnasium laughed. The school security, Miss Anthrop, stood up to help move Mr. Crab's chair from its pants. Her chair stood up her too. Everyone in the gymnasium laughed harder. The other teacher stood up and, you guessed it, from there as well. Everyone in the audience howled with laughter. One kid stood over the bathroom and his chair became with him. Also, the audience stopped laughing so hard. They all quickly checked their chairs, and suddenly the laughter stopped completely. Everyone in the whole school was glued to their seats. You see, it was true that George and Harold had not invented glue. They had invented a new kind of glue by simply mixing rubber cement with concentrated orange juice mix. They had a quick dry and body heated activated glue, and they applied this special glue on every seat in the gymnasium except theirs early that morning. Everybody in the gymnasium was glaring at George and Harold and seething with anger. I've got a good idea, said George. What? Asked Harold. Run! Cried George. George and Harold were grinning from ear to ear, remembering that silly invention and that the chaos they followed. That was hilarious, laughed Harold. Yeah, chuckled George. So it'll be hard to top that this year. Well, you won't get a chance this year, said Mr. Crab. Got a magnifying glass and held fine print on the sign. The contest is open. All students in the 3rd and 4th graders except George Beard and Harold Hutchins. You mean we can't enter the contest? Asked Harold. It's worse than that, laughed Mr. Crab. You boys can't even attend this year's convention. I'm putting you two all day. Miss Crab turned and walked away, laughing victoriously. Rats, said. What are we going to do now? Well, said George, you know the old saying, you can't join and beat 'em. Chapter 4, The Invention. Early that George and Harold sneaked back to school with their supplies. They cracked the gymnasium and peeked around. I think somebody's still in here, Harold. Oh, it's just Melvin Sneedley, said George. Melvin was the school brainiac. He was busy putting last-minute touch new invention for the contest. We should wait till he leaves, whispered Harold. No way, said George. He could be here all night. Talk to him. When Melvin saw George Harold approaching, he was not happy. Oh no, he said. I'll bet you guys are going to mess with everybody's inventions. Nice guess, said George. Listen, you promise not to mess with your... If you promise not to tell anybody that you saw us here tonight. Melvin looked lovingly at his invention and agreed. I promise, he said. Great, said George. Say, what is that invention of yours anyway? Just looks like a photocopy machine. Well, it used to be a photocopy machine, said Melvin, but I've made some major adjustments to it. Now it is an invention that revolutionized the world. I call it the Patsy 2000. It'll ruin the world, and you named it Patsy? Asked Harold. Yes, said Melvin. Patsy is an acronym for photonic transmogulating yak. I'm sorry, yes, said Harold. Allow me to demonstrate, said Melvin. The Patsy 2000 can take anyone an image and create a living, breathing, three-dimensional copy image. For example, take this ordinary photograph for a mouse. Melvin placed the mouse on the glass screen with the Patsy 2000 and press start. The lights in the gymnasium dimmed. Our entire school seemed to get sucked into the Patsy 2000. The machine began to vibrate and hum loudly, and tiny bolts of static snapped out from underneath. I hope that thing doesn't explode, said Harold. Oh, this is nothing. You've seen how the Patsy 2000 reacted when I copied a poodle. Finally, after a series of flashes and loud zaps, everything stopped. A small ding was heard, and then a tiny mouse crawled out of the door of the Patsy 2000 floor. Isn't it wonderful? Exclaimed Melvin. George inspected the mouse closely. That's a great trick, George laughed. You had me going for a while. It's not a trick, cried Melvin. The Patsy 2000 really does photos to life. I've been creating creatures from paintings and drawings. Yeah, right, laughed Harold. And I thought we were con artists. George and Harold walked away chuckling. It was time to move on to their bigger and better things. Chapter 5, Bigger and Better Things. George and Harold went to the other end of the gymnasium, opened their backpacks, and began to work. George busied himself by turning all the spray nozzles automatic dog washer around. Harold filled up the soap tank with India ink. Then they moved the volcano detector. Will you please pass me the big bag of butterscotch pudding and a Phillips head screwdriver? Asked Harold. Sure, said George. Carefully inserted eggs in an electric ping-pong ball server. Chapter 6, The Invention Convention. The following day started out sunny and cheerful. Students and Velocity filled in the gymnasium and checked the seats carefully before sitting down. Greetings, said Miss Crep, who was staying mentioned. You don't need to worry about sticky seats today, he said. I've taken measures to ensure that this invention convention won't be a disaster like last year. Everyone settled in as Madison Mancini, a third grader, stepped on stage to demonstrate her automatic dog washer. First, said Madison, you put your dog in the tub, then you press the button. Madison pressed the start button. First, nothing happened, and suddenly a spurt of inky black water sprayed up and over the crowd. Everyone except the dog got soaked as Madison tried desperately to turn sprayers. I can't stop it, she cried. Somebody turn on the nozzles around. Now, who could have done that? Asked Mr. Crep. Next up was Donnie Schumer with his electric ping ball server. He turned the machine on and immediately began hurling extra large grade A eggs in the crowd. Machine. Eggs. I can't turn the machine off, cried Donnie. Somebody jammed a paperclip in a controller. Who could have done that? Asked Miss Ribble. Freddie Moore's volcano detector was also a big flop. Freddie connected the circuits to a 9-volt battery, a large spring which had been crammed into the center of the miniature volcano. Launched a giant butterscotch pudding into the crowd. Boing! It landed itself in the third and fourth levels. Splats! Hey, whined Freddie. Somebody put pudding in my volcano. Now, who could have done that? Asked Mr. Meter. The rest of the day went on much the same way, with people shouting everything from, hey, who put all me on my solar power leaf blower, to, hey, who let all of my trouble done? But it wasn't long before everyone fled the gymnasium, and the second invention convention had to be called off. How could this happen? Cried Mr. Crab. Chocolate syrup, pencil shavings, and cream and mushroom soup, face and shirt. George and Harold have been in the study hall all day. I put them there myself. Excuse me, Mr. Crab. Unsneedly, I have an answer to your question.